Welcome to the Small Business Sisterhood podcast. I'm your host, Pepper Makepeace, an online business strategist for female solopreneurs and side hustlers, and the founder of the Small Business Sisterhood, an online membership community serving small business owners in the first stages of business. Join me as I go behind the scenes with female entrepreneurs, revealing the struggles, strategies, and inspiring stories of these amazing women. If you're interested in connecting with like-minded women in a supportive online community that helps you stay focused, motivated, and accountable as you build your business, check us out at smallbusinesssisterhood.com. Today we're talking to Susan Elford, the president of two companies, Elford Communications and Susan Elford Coaching and Consulting, as well as the founding president of the Calgary chapter of Lean In Canada. Susan's mission is to help women uncover their most fulfilling combination of work and life so they can confidently live joy-filled, purpose-driven lives. She's particularly passionate about empowering women to design careers and businesses they love to work in. Susan believes fulfilling work is the secret behind effective work-life balance for many people. This is what led Susan to resign from her corporate communications job at a multinational energy company almost 20 years ago to offer PR consulting services to primarily non-for-profit organizations. Susan also provides leadership coaching and small business mentorship to women leaders who are designing, building, and leading their small businesses. Well, thank you, Susan, for being here on the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you and share your business with the world. How are you?
Thanks, Pepper. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's a beautiful day.
Wonderful. So tell everybody a little bit about you and your business.
Okay, well, I have been in business for 18 years. I first started Elford Communications when I first became a mom. And it's funny, women have been becoming mothers since the beginning of time. for some reason, I hadn't really anticipated how much being a mom was going to impact my career and my and how I showed up in the world. I really found myself really torn once I became a mom because I wanted to be giving my daughter a more traditional way of being, but yet here we are, my husband and I were out there in the world doing all the things, and it just didn't seem to connect for me. So I resigned my corporate job and started Elford Communications, which is still in operation. However, and that was 18 years ago. But in the last 5 years ago, I started another business called Susan Elford Coaching and Consulting. And the focus of that work is really on mentoring and coaching women to build meaningful careers and businesses. Mm-hmm. And that is the core of the work I do now. And then the communications PR aspect is one way that women can build those businesses.
I love it. So tell me how did you begin that? You said it was 5 years ago you started the coaching business?
Yes.
So what prompted that kind of addition to your work?
Yeah, well, so it's interesting because starting Elford Communications was my solution to work-life balance because I was in a busy corporate job with a big international energy firm. My husband was also equally busy. We never seemed to be home at the same time. It was just this giant juggle, and I just felt really quite stressed most of the time. And so that's why I quit that job to start Elford Communications. And when I did that, it was still early on. Like a lot of women, this whole thing where there's so many women now are starting businesses. I think there's some statistics around more women are starting their own business than men at this point. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the reasons is to achieve some semblance of work-life balance. But at the time, there weren't very many people doing it. And so I had a parade of people who wanted to go for coffee with me to ask me, how did I do it? How did I start my business? How did it go? How did I get clients? How did I manage work and home? How did I work from home? Like all those questions. Mm. And I really found myself continually drawn to wanting to mentor this community and really became almost more excited about why I was doing it versus what I was doing. So the why behind the business became something that I loved talking about and loved helping people with. And so that is how Susan Elford Coaching and Consulting was born, to really be able to formalize that support to that community in a way that I could monetize it as well. Because initially it wasn't my business to do that, right? It
Right.
was just going for coffee with people. It was just becoming a little bit out of control. There was so much.
It's so fascinating to me when businesses kind of start themselves and then it becomes official later. These people coming to you for something that you end up doing as your business. Like it's such a natural process, it seems like.
And I also found I continually would ask myself if I was still doing the right work. Like,
Mm,
should I be doing something else? And I always felt called to something else. And I
mhm.
realize now that this is what I was called to do.
Yeah.
So it was a stepping stone for me. I loved my communications business, and I still offer services inside of that, but primarily through a network of people who I subcontract support out of. So really, I care more now about the business owner and who that woman is
Mm,
versus what she does.
that makes sense. So you and I met in a mastermind. Gosh, it's been what, over a year ago now, maybe a
For
year and a
sure.
half. Yeah. And at that time, you were just starting a new project with Lean In. Can you tell everybody about that project as well?
Sure. Yeah, it's actually very aligned with the coaching and consulting practice I
Yeah.
started in 2015. So in 2015, I read a book called Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, who many people know now as the Chief Operating Officer of Facebook. And she wrote that book based on her journey through corporate life. And she was noticing as she climbed up the ladder how there was fewer and fewer women alongside her. And she got curious about that. Like, what was she doing that other women weren't doing? Or what was holding women back from that climb if that's something they wanted? And her book really spoke to me because it was at the root of why I had resigned from my corporate job all those years ago when I started Elford Communications.
Mm.
And so I too was really curious about that. And if I had read that book 18 years ago, would I have made the same choices? And I know now that there are other ways to achieve work life balance. You don't have to start your own business. In fact, it's not even the solution, which is another reason why I got into the coaching piece, because I could get myself just as busy as a business owner, if not more so, than I did inside corporate. So the work of Lean In was really important to me and was very aligned with my business mission as well. And so I founded a circle here in Calgary, Alberta in 2015. And as time went on, this really took flight. Like I don't know how many circles existed at that time, but now there's 50,000 circles around the world,
Wow.
and they're becoming more and more organized and bigger and bigger. And so along the way, Lean In Canada was formed, and they were looking for a city chapter president, and I was invited to apply for that role. And so I became the founding president of Lean In Calgary in 2018. And so now the difference is we are a network, and then there's circles within our network. So I'm now the network leader for Lean In Calgary, and then the circles, including the one I formed, which still exists, are smaller peer mentoring groups of women who meet together regularly, usually monthly. And then the network provides bigger citywide events that happen, say, quarterly throughout the year. So it's a way to reach more people, and also it really speaks to my socialist nature of not actually wanting to not having to force people to pay for those services. Like this is a way that I give back. You can
Mm.
get access to this kind of mentoring through my volunteer work, or if you're looking for a more focused approach, particularly around business building, then that is where the business side of my support comes in.
I love that. And I've struggled too with that. How do you balance, the work and making the necessary money to support ourselves and do what we love to do within our businesses, but also that aspect of wanting to give back and really kind of balancing those two pieces of ourselves. I think a lot of women, when they start their businesses or even, over the years, that becomes not complicated, but it's a little confusing sometimes on how to do both. And I love that you found Lean In as your outlet for that. Can you kind of speak more to that? Do you find that as women business owners that that's kind of a thing we think about a lot?
Definitely heart-based business owners, right? Like I
Yeah.
love to work with women who it's not just about the money, and
Yeah.
they usually have some kind of passion, some kind of reason for wanting to start their business, even if it is to monetize on their to create an income for their family on their own timeline. But more often than not, there's something that they want to do in the world. There's some kind of mark they want to make. There's some way that they have discovered that they can make the world a better place, and they want to do that through their business.
Yeah.
And I have a huge heart to support those business owners. It's one of the reasons why in my Elford Communications work, most of my work was with not-for-profits. I really like working with people who are all in. Their hearts are all in the work that they're doing.
Yeah. So what kind of advice would you like if there's not an obvious fit, like Lean In was, really aligned with what
Very
you
aligned.
wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody has, a passion that maybe doesn't have something obvious like that would be a way to volunteer, like how would you suggest that they go about incorporating that aspect into their businesses and still make the money that they need to support themselves and their family?
Yeah, I love it. So there's some really neat models out there. I know one coach I know, she's a corporate coach, and she'll just say, charge the big companies the big money so that you can offer some pro bono spots in your business for those that you really want to serve. So you can create a piece of your business where you do have a certain number of pro bono spots so that you can feel like, okay, so um, you can say that your business is full at 80% and offer the other 20% at a much lower rate or as a pro bono spot if you thought that was useful. Another thing, so there's an organization called Dress for Success, and it's a not-for-profit where women who are trying to get back in the workforce after having been like sidelined, perhaps through addiction, perhaps through a stint in prison, or perhaps through abuse. Like there's somewhere they don't have the wherewithal to really support their own work ambitions, and so that organization collects donations to help support those people. They accept donations of clothing. They have stores where you can go in and outfit yourself before you go for your interview. So that's another organization that I would say is quite aligned with the work I do from at another end of the continuum. And so I will donate to that organization, or I might attend their functions or promote those. So you can find other organizations that are aligned with your values and that you can put your volunteer time or energy into as well. So it doesn't have, it's just happened to be very aligned. Lean In happened to be very aligned with what I was doing.
Yeah. So my next question then, and I have run into this myself, so I kind of have the model of doing pro bono work alongside of paid client work. Sometimes I get a little out of balance where it seems like the pro bono work is taking over like more of my time than I had intended. And because I want to keep helping them, I can't say no, or I don't want to say no at the time.
Yes.
And what would you say to that? Like, how do you keep that balance between the free stuff and what you're getting paid for?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. And I would say it's taken me a while because Lean In has been an enormous volunteer commitment for me, I will say, and enormously rewarding, right? Like when I was asked that question even a couple of years ago, and I would say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so busy. This is crazy," but I wasn't resentful or feeling too strung out from it. I knew intellectually I was too busy, but I was loving all of it. So if you're not loving all of it, that's a good clue. But one thing for me was I built a volunteer team. I now have a team of 15 people supporting me with Lean in Calgary, and I've built some leadership skills around that, learned more about running a volunteer team, and been spreading the love, right? Like I now basically run my leadership team for Lean in Calgary like a Lean In circle. And we've really built this beautiful community even amongst ourselves as we're now serving hundreds of women in the city. So it's really cool to see it grow and enrolling people in your vision so that you're not doing it all is one recommendation I would make.
Yeah. That's a good recommendation. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd love to get your feedback on I keep seeing these amazing businesses. Some of them are certified B Corps, and some of them are just have this beautiful business model of a percentage of their sales goes to something sometimes really related and sometimes completely unrelated to the work that they're doing. One of my favorite companies is called Grounds and Hounds, and they sell coffee, really like good, fair trade sourced, wonderful coffee. And they donate then a portion of their proceeds to animal shelters. And I think it's a fascinating combination of completely unrelated things that forms this business. And then there's another business that I love. It's originally started, I think, in Australia, and now they're kind of all over the world and making a huge wave this year with the toilet paper. It's a toilet paper business called Who Gives a Crap? Have you heard of them?
No, but
I,
that's
abs-
fantastic.
I absolutely love them, and they are so fun with all their marketing. Their blog is called Talking Crap. Like they're just genius with all of their branding. But so part of their so they have recycled toilet paper and then bamboo sourced toilet paper. So there's this they're certified B Corp. It's a environmentally sourced product, and but they also donate a percentage of their proceeds to building toilets in locations that don't have that kind of facility. So like all over the world. And so there's these different kind of business models that I've been seeing pop up more and more that I absolutely love the concept of. Like, do you feel like that's kind of increasing lately, or is that just I'm just noticing it more?
I think it's definitely increasing. And it's actually a beautiful segue into part of the work I do with people around building relationships and
Mm,
building a reputation and a brand that really connects with who you are.
mm,
So the public relations work that I do, it's interesting. Like I think when people think of PR, they often think of it as being on TV or being out there in mass media. But at the root of public PR is our relationships.
yeah.
So public relationships and building relationships through the public eye, and people can see where you see you wearing your heart on your sleeve. So what you're telling me here, like with that organization, like what's it called? Like I don't give a crap or give a
Who
crap
gives a
or
crap?
who gives a crap. So they're making it very clear what they give a crap about,
Right.
right? To
Yeah.
continue with the pun.
Yeah.
And by just saying, okay, we give 20% of our proceeds to this charity, and this is what we do, they are showing you their values. They're showing you
Mm,
what they stand for. They're showing you that they're not all about the profit. They're showing you they're branding themselves through their values.
yeah.
And I mean, that is what I do. I can't help but show up that way. And
Right.
that's something else that people come to me for. In addition to how did you start your business, it's how did you build your business? And a huge way that I've built my business is through volunteering, is
Yeah.
through showing up where I care. And and people can tell if that's authentic or not. So
Right.
you can't make this stuff up. Like people don't generally give to charities just to tick a
Because it looks
box.
good, right?
Yeah, they have to
Yeah.
really care about it. And
Right.
and that's a big piece of building your reputation and building the relationships that you want to create inside of your business.
Yeah.
So I do think it's happening increasingly. So for example, when I was working in corporate all those years ago, the side of the business that I really liked working on was, at the time they didn't even call it corporate social responsibility, but that's what it's called now. It's a
Mm,
whole industry, CSR, corporate social responsibility, and it's about making sure organizations are corporately responsible. Like what are they doing for the environment? What are they doing for society? How are they, like if you're running a pipeline across the country, like are you talking to the landowners? Like how is that happening? How
mm,
and maybe a pipeline is not the greatest example. The point is, but you're not going to run a pipeline through a company through a country without getting social license to do so, right? Like there's a
yeah.
lot of there's a lot of protests that happen around that. So
Right.
you have to. You're not even going to be able to move your business forward if you don't have those social licenses created.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing about the toilet paper company is not only do they want to fill a need and sell toilet paper, they also want to show what they give a crap about.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
so now people are buying more than toilet paper. They're
Right.
also buying that brand.
Yeah.
Right? It's like whether you go to Starbucks or whether you go to another coffee company, like what are you supporting? Are you supporting small business? Are you supporting an international brand? Are you supporting green coffee? Like, what is it? And more people want to support organizations and companies that align with their brand and their values.
Yeah. Would you agree that I can speak more to women than men, so I will do that, that more women are starting businesses now with kind of that as their one of the whys behind their business? I know that when I started my business, I worked in corporate for a little while, and then I worked in a nonprofit for a while, and I had switched to a nonprofit because at the company I worked for in corporate it didn't have much of a heart, and so that was really missing in the work that I was doing, and so I went to nonprofit. And then it was kind of like, okay, this is a great cause, but it doesn't feel like my cause. And so then I started my business because it was more aligned with what I really wanted to do. And I'm wondering if you're seeing that in a lot of, new business owners. It's kind of this calling to be part of the solution and be part of a community that cares about each other. Is that something that you have a lot in your client work that you see?
Well, certainly the people who are drawn to work with me are often socially minded as well. They have a bigger vision that's beyond the earning power of their current business idea. I do think many people start businesses not realizing how much of a mission they have. Right? They're just going on. This is what I want to do, and then after working with me, they realize really the why behind, like, what is it that's driving them? What is it that they are working so hard for? And it could be for something that they hadn't even realized was a huge passion for them. But once they land on what is got that fire roaring inside them, it makes all the difference, because then they can really purposefully design that business to be successful, to feed that fire. Because there are easier ways to make money. You and I know this. There are easier ways to make money than working for yourself in a small business, especially during the implications of the global pandemic. Like, small businesses are closing their doors all over the place. You have to really care about it, right? It has to be important to you. So the short answer is yes. And I don't think that everyone who starts their business understands why they're doing it.
That's really interesting.
In all the ways. Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit more about the relationship-based PR. PR kind of, in my mind, even now after, kind of doing some of that in my business, I don't do it as well as I would like, but I know what it is. I know what it looks like. I know some of the things that you can do, but that relationship-based marketing, like, tell me more about that. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So years ago, I actually have a degree in public relations. I have a Bachelor of Public Relations, and it was at a time when it was still a fairly new field. I just received notice from my alma mater this week that I've graduated 25 years ago this year. Oh my gosh. And in that program, they taught us about building two-way relationships. So you can do one-way and two-way. So one-way relationship was you send out a news release, or one-way relationship was perhaps you're on television and you're doing an interview. But two-way was when you're interacting with the people on the other side. And what's so interesting about that is that with social media and all the ways we have to interact with each other now, two-way relationships has become very commonplace. In fact, organizations who don't listen, don't communicate with their clients and their customers are considered quite cold, right? So really, public relations has always been about relationships, except now that we have more tools to do it in a broader way than we ever did before. So the way I see public relations is much broader than as a tool to reach your customers and your clients. It's around building a reputation and building a brand that is authentic to you as an organization. So, and we've talked about this. I do that through my volunteerism. I do that through the clients that I like to serve. I do that through being very purposeful about where I show up. And because everything you do showcases who you are as a company, who you are as an individual, who you are as a brand. And everywhere you show up, you're building relationships.
Right.
So public relations can be as simple um, as supporting a cause. It can be as simple as having this podcast. Like, this is a form of public relations. You and I are having a wonderful conversation. It's going to go out there in the airwaves. People will hear it, and I get to communicate what my brand is. I get to communicate how I want to show up, and that's all inherent in what public relations is. So it can be very nuanced, and it can also be very purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a long-winded answer, but there are so many different ways that you can use PR, but really it's about relationships and how you show up.
Yeah. So somebody that's just starting out and marketing is something they've never done before, how would you suggest they even get started with PR for their business? Like,
it depends on how big a business you're planning to build. I have always built my business on relationships. So identifying those networking organizations that are aligned with the work I do, identifying who I'm selling my services to, and making sure I'm mingling with those people. It's about finding ways for people to hear what your message is. So maybe you've written a book, or maybe you're starting a podcast, or maybe you're starting a blog. I have been blogging now for 5 years. I love to blog. I don't even know how many people read it, but I love to write, and it's a great way for me to put what I want to say out there in the world. So that's also a form of PR. So I would suggest for the small business owner who's just starting out, look at where you can show up and build relationships, look at organizations where you can participate, find ways to get your message out through social media, through blogging, through vlogging, like using video, through podcasting. But PR is historically a fairly low budget way to build your message if you're doing it yourself.
Yeah.
And anyone can learn how to do it. It's just a matter of identifying what the best opportunities are for your business.
Yeah. I love that. That's really good advice. And it's interesting because I think maybe some of us are doing PR activities without realizing that we're actually doing PR. And it feels, whether it's content marketing or just, communicating with your local group, like if you're part of Rotary or whatever, like you're still representing your business, but maybe not thinking about it as PR.
Exactly right. Yeah. So traditional PR tools would be, okay, you're building a website, you're giving a speech, you are being interviewed on the air, you go to functions, you sponsor events. Advertising is obviously paid, and that can work into your PR plan too. But advertising is one way. You're buying an ad. Public relations is two way. It's about building the relationship.
Right. Yeah. Well, and for heart-centered businesses, I would think that would feel so much more natural too than that one way.
Yeah, I find that people just kind of breathe a sigh of relief when they understand what it is that public relations really is. It's really about knowing what you stand for, knowing who you want to interact with, and being authentic, being that person.
Yeah. Definitely. And you have a course, right, on your website that's available for people that are interested in learning more. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's called Activate the Power of PR. It's a 5-part webinar-based program that introduces PR and the key ways that the small business owner can use big business PR strategies on their small business budget.
Love that.
And it's a lot of great content in there. And for anyone who jumps into that community, there's a private Facebook group that I'm in there every week answering questions and so on. So it's a great way to get introduced to what PR can do for your business and to implement some things right away.
Wonderful. I'll be sure to link that in the show notes for everyone.
Yeah.
So I love to ask everybody on the podcast kind of what it was like for them just starting out. And you as a business owner for 18 years, it might be a little hard to remember maybe some of the challenges when you were first starting out, or you can talk about, 5 years ago when you launched your other business. But what are some things that maybe surprised you or specifically challenging about just getting started on your own?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to speak to the 18-year ago mark because
Okay.
it's at the core even of the PR message, which it's ridiculous that I had this issue given my background in PR. But I initially found it really hard to own my worth and to speak confidently about what I did. So I had always been aligned to very large corporations and governments. I was chasing after ministers, writing speeches, running news conferences in my early days. And, those are big ego kind of titles. And when I went out on my own and people say, "Oh, what are you doing now, Susan?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, no, I'm just kind of, yeah, I just started my own thing." Well, I had a name. I knew what I did. Do you think I could tell people? And I just like, yeah, I just do, I'll do anything really. And I wasn't getting any work by telling people that I would do anything. And
Right.
so then so I sat down and went, well, what kind of work do I really want? And that's when I started telling people that, well, I really love to work with not-for-profits and organizations that have a really heart-centered purpose to their mission. And then the work started coming in the door and it never stopped. So being able to put to words what it is you want to do, even if you're not expert in it yet. I mean, I'll tell you a little secret. I not even sure I had any not-for-profits as paid clients before I started telling people that's what I wanted to work for. I had given money to them. I had designed grants for them. I had announced them, but I had not worked inside them. And that's where I wanted to focus my time in my early days. So I just started telling people I have a passion for not-for-profits. And that's the work I started to get.
I love that. And I love that it didn't come instantly easy for you, even though that was your industry, that you knew exactly how to
It's
do the
ridiculous. I tell people about this story. One of my first clients was the United Way of Calgary, and I wrote their annual report, their report to the community. And I attended this huge event at a big function here in the city. And I went, and it was so intimidating. There were so many people. And I went to the registration table, and they said, "Okay, so who are you here with?" And I was like, "I don't know, like you guys." Like I wrote the report. Like they were celebrating the work that I had done. It was award winning. It was a good night.
Yeah.
And they said, "Well, what's your name?" And I said, "My name's Susan Elford." And they looked it up and said, "Oh, you're with Elford Communications." I'm like, yes, I am. Thank you. And I went and took my seat at the table, and I have never forgotten that. I always proudly say the name of the company because the only person not owning it was me.
Right.
So my big advice is to
To own
know
it.
what you do and be able to speak about it confidently.
Yeah. Such a hard thing initially to feel that confidence. And I love that you work with people on that because it's such a big piece and it can change everything. Everything shifts when you own what you're doing and feel really good about it. And it's such a great example that you have in your own business, even though that's your thing.
Isn't that funny?
It's
Like the
inspiring though,
shoemaker's
because it's
children.
okay.
It's a completely different thing working for yourself. You might know what you're
Yeah.
doing. I was writing speeches for leaders of provinces and organizations, but do you think I could speak for myself confidently? It took practice.
Yeah. That's a good reminder that it's okay that it doesn't come instantly and we just need to work at it and get clear about it and then go for it.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So, what do you have coming up in your business? What's going on? What's new?
Yeah, well, I think this is going to distribution or air in January. And so at the beginning of the year, I always like to take stock on what's coming up the year ahead. And I love to speak to the community of women who, who are just are in a place where they're not sure what's next for them. And so I've designed this something brand new this year that I'm really excited about. And the realities of the global pandemic have made the ability for people to be able to join from anywhere. So I'm holding my first ever virtual retreat at the end of January. It's going to be live.
Awesome.
It's on January 29th and 30th. And it is for women in business or women in mid-career who are trying to figure out what's next. So it's an opportunity to take stock of what's been going well. It's an opportunity to integrate not only their professional life, but also their personal lives. Because I do find women with great ambition, like you and I, have a tendency to take on too much, have a tendency to have a lot of fingers and a lot of pies. And sometimes it's important to let some of those go or take on something new that's going to be a better fit for you right now, especially if your values are really important to you. So that weekend is an opportunity to get reconnected with yourself and what's important to you, and also make a plan and get re-energized for putting it into shape for 2021.
I love that. That's such a powerful time to do it. At the beginning of a year, it always feels so fresh, like clean slate. Like it's like a do-over in a way in my mind that it's like, okay, we can just start fresh now. And what we learned last year, now we can kind of amplify that and make some changes if necessary. I love that.
Yeah. And I'm super excited about it too, because even though my dream is to be running these in person at some kind of beautiful retreat getaway, the fact that it's virtual really makes it affordable for just about anybody. You don't have to worry about flying somewhere, as much as that would be nice. We'd all like to do that right about now.
Yeah, right. But it's a way to kind of get away for a little while without the complications of actually going somewhere. So it's a great way to do that. And I will be sure again to link to that in the show notes. So check that out as well. So it's been so much fun talking to you, Susan. I really appreciate all your wisdom and your experience, and I've learned a lot from you over the years, and I'm glad to share that a little bit with people today. So thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Pepper, for having me. It's such a privilege.
Thank you, Susan, for talking with us today. You can find out more information about Susan and the link to her website in the show notes for this episode at smallbusinesssisterhood.com/30. I hope you found this episode useful and inspiring. If you did, please pop over to iTunes and leave a review. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.